The moment my sister called me used goods at my own birthday dinner, I wanted to disappear into the cracked vinyl booth and never come back up. But then a complete stranger stood up in that restaurant and said 4 words that changed my entire life forever. I'm Brooke Hamilton, and 6 months ago I thought I had my whole life figured out. I was going to marry my college boyfriend Brad, move into the house we picked out together on Maple Street, maybe start a family in a few years. I was 29 and everything was going according to plan. Then 3 weeks before our wedding, Brad came home from his job at the insurance office and told me he'd been sleeping with his coworker Jennifer for 8 months. He said he couldn't go through with marrying me because he'd realized what real love felt like. That night changed everything. I went from planning a honeymoon in Cancun to frantically canceling vendors and returning wedding gifts. I moved out of our shared apartment and into a tiny studio above Henderson's hardware store on Main Street. The rent was cheap because the pipes made noise and the heater barely worked, but it was mine. For the first time in 5 years, I was completely on my own. Now I work at Cedar Falls Animal Rescue, spending my days with abandoned dogs and cats who've been thrown away by people who were supposed to love them. There's something fitting about that. Every morning I wake up at 6, put on my scrubs with the little paw prints, and drive my beat-up Honda to work. Some days I save lives. Other days I hold dying animals and whisper that they're loved. It's heartbreaking work, but it's honest work. And after years of pretending everything was perfect with Brad, honesty feels like oxygen. Tonight is my 30th birthday, and my grandmother, Nana Ruth, insisted on throwing me a family dinner at Maggie's Kitchen. She raised me and my younger sister Amber after our parents died in a car crash when I was 16. Nana Ruth means well, but she comes from a generation where a woman my age without a husband is something to be worried about, talked about, fixed. She invited my whole family because she thought surrounding me with love would help me feel better about being alone. What she doesn't understand is that I'm not lonely. I'm healing. But explaining that to my family feels impossible, especially when they look at me with those pitying eyes, like I'm a broken thing that needs repairing. Cedar Falls is the kind of town where everyone knows your business before you do. Population 8,000, 2 traffic lights, and 1 diner, where all the important conversations happen. Maggie's Kitchen sits right on Main Street between the post office and Murphy's Pharmacy, and it's been serving the same meatloaf and mashed potatoes since 1967. The red vinyl booths are cracked and patched with duct tape. The coffee is strong enough to wake the dead, and Dolly Martinez has been serving tables there for 20 years. She knows how you like your eggs before you sit down. Tonight, Dolly seated our family in the big corner booth, the one they reserve for celebrations and bad news. I arrived 10 minutes late because Mrs. Patterson brought in a stray kitten with an infected eye, and I couldn't leave until Dr. Williams looked at it. I walked into Maggie's still smelling like antiseptic and dog shampoo, my scrubs wrinkled from wrestling with an anxious German Shepherd mix named Buddy, who didn't want his shots. My family was already there waiting. Nana Ruth sat at the head of the table wearing her best blue dress, the one she saves for church and special occasions. At 72, she's still sharp as a tack, but her hands shake a little when she's nervous, and tonight they were trembling as she smoothed her silver hair. She'd already ordered my favorite chocolate cake from the bakery counter, and it sat on the table with 3 candles stuck in the frosting. My Uncle Pete, Nana Ruth's son, dominated the other end of the booth with his broad shoulders and work-worn hands. At 48, he's been driving trucks for 25 years, and his stories about life on the road usually keep everyone entertained. But tonight, he seemed uncomfortable, fidgeting with his coffee cup and avoiding eye contact. Pete stepped up as our father figure after the accident, walking me down the aisle at my high school graduation and teaching me how to change my car's oil. He means well, but he's never been good with emotional situations. His wife Kelly sat beside him, already 3 sips into her second Diet Coke. Kelly works at the DMV and has opinions about everyone's life choices. She's the kind of woman who asks intrusive questions disguised as concern, then acts hurt when you don't want to answer them. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and fresh manicure made me feel even more self-conscious about my bitten nails and the small scratch on my cheek from an angry tabby cat. Their son, Tyler, 22 and fresh out of college, was practically glowing with happiness. He'd driven down from the state university where he just finished his business degree, and he couldn't stop talking about his girlfriend Rachel and their recent engagement. Tyler's always been the golden child, the one who does everything right and makes it look easy. Tonight, he kept showing everyone pictures on his phone of Rachel's ring, a modest diamond that looked enormous through his proud eyes. My sister Amber arrived just as I did, sliding into the booth across from me with barely a hello. At 24, she's everything I never was, confident, outspoken, and completely sure of her place in the world. She's studying pre-law at the community college and has been dating the same guy, Derek, since junior year of high school. They're talking about getting married after she graduates, and everyone treats their relationship like it's some kind of achievement award. Amber has always been jealous of the attention I got after our parents died, like their death somehow gave me an unfair advantage in Nana Ruth's affections. The conversation started safe enough. Pete told us about his latest delivery to Denver and the snowstorm that nearly trapped him in the mountains. Tyler showed us more photos from his engagement party, and Nana Ruth fussed over whether anyone wanted more coffee. I picked at my meatloaf and tried to look interested, but I could feel the weight of their attention settling on me like a heavy blanket. I knew what was coming. In a town like Cedar Falls, a 30-year-old woman without a wedding ring is an anomaly that needs explaining. Everyone had been dancing around the subject of my failed engagement for months, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt like an intervention disguised as a birthday party. Dolly refilled my water glass and gave me a sympathetic smile. She'd watched me grow up in this diner, celebrated my graduation, my engagement announcement, and now she was witnessing whatever this was going to be. The other customers were settling into their evening routines, but I noticed a man sitting alone in a corner booth with a teenage girl who looked bored and kept checking her phone. They seemed to be having their own serious conversation, the kind that made the girl roll her eyes and cross her arms. I had no idea that stranger was about to change everything. The trouble started when Kelly pushed her empty plate away and leaned forward with that look I knew too well. It's the same expression she gets when she's about to tell someone at the DMV that they filled out their forms wrong, except tonight, I was the one who'd apparently messed up. "So, Brooke," she said, stirring sugar into her fresh cup of coffee, "have you thought about getting back out there? I mean, it's been what, 6 months since Brad?" The question hung in the air like cigarette smoke. Nana Ruth's fork paused halfway to her mouth, and Pete suddenly became very interested in the ketchup bottle. Tyler looked up from his phone where he'd been showing Rachel's engagement photos to anyone who'd listen. "I'm doing fine, Aunt Kelly, really." I kept my voice steady and took another bite of mashed potatoes that suddenly tasted like cardboard. "Oh, honey, I'm not saying you're not fine," Kelly continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "It's just that you're 30 now and, well, time isn't exactly on your side anymore. Have you tried those dating apps? I hear they're very popular with young people." Amber snorted into her water glass. "Dating apps are for desperate people," Mom always said. "Your mom never had to worry about finding a husband," Kelly shot back. "She married your daddy when she was 22. Things were different then." Nana Ruth finally spoke up. "Kelly, maybe we should talk about something else. It's Brooke's birthday." But Kelly was just getting started. She'd been holding this conversation in for months, and now she had a captive audience. "I'm just saying, Brooke needs to be realistic. She can't keep working with those animals forever, expecting Prince Charming to walk through the door of some pet shelter." "It's an animal rescue," I corrected quietly. "Whatever it is, it's not a career path that's going to attract the right kind of man. Men want women who take care of people, not strays." Tyler looked uncomfortable, but didn't defend me. Pete cleared his throat like he was going to say something, then didn't. Nana Ruth patted my hand under the table, but even her support felt fragile. "Maybe Kelly has a point," Pete finally said, trying to lighten the mood with a chuckle that fell flat. "You've always been too picky, Brookie. Remember in high school when you turned down Jimmy Morrison for prom? His daddy owns the car dealership now." "I turned down Jimmy Morrison because he tried to look up my skirt in chemistry class," I said. "Boys will be boys," Pete shrugged. "Point is, maybe you need to lower your standards a little. Not every guy is going to be perfect." The words hit like a slap. Lower my standards. As if wanting basic respect was asking too much. As if Brad cheating on me was somehow my fault for expecting fidelity. Amber, emboldened by the family's united front, decided to deliver the killing blow. She leaned back in her seat with a smirk I recognized from our teenage years, when she'd get me in trouble just to watch me squirm. Maybe if you hadn't wasted 5 years with Brad, you'd still have time to find someone decent, she said, her voice carrying across the diner. But honestly, Brooke, you're almost 30. Men don't want used women with all that baggage. Used women. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my face burn with humiliation as the phrase echoed in my head. Used. Like I was a car with too many miles or a dress that had been worn too many times. Like Brad's betrayal had somehow damaged me permanently, made me less worthy of love. The table went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then Uncle Pete let out a nervous chuckle. Well, Amber's not wrong about that. Tyler actually laughed outright, a sharp bark that made me flinch. Harsh but true, sis. Even Nana Ruth, my defender, my champion, gave a small, uncomfortable smile and looked down at her cake. Not agreeing exactly, but not disagreeing either, not defending me when I needed it most. I forced myself to smile and take a sip of water, my hands somehow steady even though my whole world was tilting sideways. This was my family. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and they were sitting here agreeing that I was damaged goods. The conversation moved on as if nothing had happened. Kelly started talking about Tyler's wedding plans. Pete mentioned something about his next trucking route. Amber pulled out her phone and started texting Derek. They'd delivered their verdict, and now they were ready for dessert. I sat there mechanically cutting my meatloaf into smaller and smaller pieces, planning my escape. I'd finish eating, make an excuse about an early shift tomorrow, and leave. I could cry in my car where nobody would see me fall apart. That's when I noticed the man in the corner booth stand up. I sat there staring at my plate, watching the gravy congeal around my half-eaten meatloaf, while my family chatted about Tyler's upcoming wedding as if they hadn't just torn me apart 3 minutes earlier. The conversation had moved on so smoothly, it was like watching a movie where someone gets hit by a car and everyone just steps over the body and keeps walking. Kelly was now giving Tyler unsolicited advice about wedding venues. The VFW hall is perfectly nice and much more affordable than that fancy place in Riverside. Your cousin Jenny had a reception there and it was lovely. Rachel really wants something more elegant, Tyler said, scrolling through photos on his phone. Her parents are helping with the cost? Well, when you're paying for it yourself, you'll understand the value of practical choices, Pete chimed in, signaling Dolly for more coffee. Amber was texting furiously, probably telling Derek about the family drama he'd missed. Every few seconds, she'd glance up at me with this satisfied smirk, like she'd just won some contest I didn't know we were having. Nana Ruth was the only one who seemed uncomfortable with how quickly everyone had moved past what just happened. She kept looking at me with worried eyes and pushing the untouched chocolate cake closer to my side of the table. Brooke, honey, do you want me to have Dolly wrap up your dinner? You've barely touched it. I'm fine, Nana, I lied, forcing another bite. The food tasted like sawdust, but I needed something to do with my hands to keep from shaking. I was calculating my escape plan. Finish at least half the meatloaf so Nana Ruth wouldn't worry. Make it through the cake ceremony. Claim I had to be at work early tomorrow to check on the kitten Mrs. Patterson brought in. Drive home to my little apartment above the hardware store. Run a hot bath and pretend this night never happened. The plan was solid. I could do this. I'd survived worse things than my family's casual cruelty. I'd survived losing my parents, survived Brad's betrayal, survived starting over completely at 29. I could survive one terrible birthday dinner. But then something shifted in my peripheral vision. The man in the corner booth, the one who'd been having what looked like a serious conversation with the teenage girl across from him, suddenly stood up. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair and broad shoulders that filled out his navy button-down shirt. The girl with him looked mortified, her face flushed red as she hissed something at him under her breath. Dad, no, please don't do this, I heard her whisper, but her voice carried in the suddenly quiet diner. Dad. So they were father and daughter, not a couple on an awkward date like I'd assumed. The girl looked about 16, with long dark hair and the kind of defiant posture that screamed teenager embarrassed by her parents' behavior. The man said something back to her too quiet for me to hear, but firm enough that she slumped back in her seat with resignation. Then he looked directly at our table, and I felt my stomach drop. He'd been listening. This stranger had heard every word of my humiliation, and now he was getting involved. I wanted to sink through the floor. Bad enough that my own family had just called me damaged goods in public, but now some random man was going to make it worse by drawing even more attention to the situation. I could already imagine the story spreading through Cedar Falls tomorrow. You should have seen what happened at Maggie's last night. The Hamilton girl's family was giving her what for about being single, and then some stranger butted in. The man walked toward the counter where Dolly was wiping down coffee cups. She looked up as he approached, and I watched them have a brief, quiet conversation. Dolly's eyes widened, and she glanced over at our table with something that looked like determination. My family was still oblivious, too caught up in wedding planning to notice the drama unfolding across the diner. Kelly was now lecturing Tyler about the importance of a prenuptial agreement, while Pete nodded along and made jokes about protecting his tool collection. Amber had put her phone down and was actually engaging in the conversation, probably relieved to have found a topic that didn't involve criticizing me. "Excuse me, folks," Dolly said, suddenly appearing at our table with her coffee pot in one hand and the most nervous expression I'd ever seen on her usually confident face. Her voice shook slightly as she continued. "The gentleman in the back booth asked me to deliver a message. He'd like to say something to your table, if that's all right." Pete looked annoyed at the interruption. "What kind of message?" Kelly perked up with interest, always eager for drama as long as she wasn't the target. Tyler and Amber exchanged confused glances, and Nana Ruth just looked worried. But before anyone could object or ask questions, the man was already walking toward us, his teenage daughter reluctantly following behind. The entire diner went silent as Officer Marcus Thompson approached our table. I could feel every pair of eyes in Maggie's kitchen turning toward us, conversation stopping mid-sentence as people sensed something significant was about to happen. This was the kind of moment that would be retold at the post office and the hardware store for months to come. Marcus was even more imposing up close, with kind eyes that held the quiet authority of someone used to handling difficult situations. His teenage daughter Zoe hung back a few steps, her face burning with embarrassment but her eyes fixed on me with something that looked like sympathy. "I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner," Marcus began, his voice calm but carrying clearly across the now silent restaurant. "My name is Marcus Thompson, and this is my daughter Zoe. We were having our own difficult conversation about respect and self-worth when we couldn't help but overhear yours." Uncle Pete's face darkened. "Look, mister, I don't know who you think you are, but this is a private family matter. You made it public the moment you said it loud enough for a restaurant full of people to hear," Marcus replied without missing a beat. "And when a conversation involves tearing down another human being's worth, it stops being private and starts being everyone's responsibility to speak up." Kelly bristled. "How dare you eavesdrop on our conversation and then come over here and lecture us? We're trying to help Brooke face reality." "Reality?" Marcus turned to look directly at me, and I felt something in his expression that I hadn't felt from my own family all night. Respect. "Ma'am, I don't know you personally, but I know enough about character to recognize it. Anyone who dedicates their life to rescuing abandoned animals has a heart worth treasuring, not dismissing." My throat tightened. This stranger had taken 30 seconds to see something in me that my own family seemed incapable of recognizing. Marcus turned back to address the table, his voice growing stronger. "I've been a police detective for 12 years. I've seen what happens when families tear each other down instead of building each other up. I've written reports about domestic violence that started with exactly this kind of emotional abuse disguised as concern. I've interviewed victims who believed they were worthless because the people who claimed to love them convinced them it was true." "Now wait just a minute," Pete said, half rising from his seat. "Nobody here is abusing anybody. We're family." "Family doesn't give you the right to destroy someone's self-worth," Marcus shot back. "Actually, it gives you the responsibility to protect it." Zoe stepped forward then, her voice quiet but steady. "My dad has been trying to teach me about standing up to bullies at school. He always says that a person's value isn't determined by other people's opinions or their relationship status. I guess some adults need to hear that lesson too." The words hit like a thunderclap. Here was a 16-year-old girl showing more emotional maturity than my entire family combined. "This is ridiculous," Amber snapped. "You don't know anything about our family or what Brooke needs to hear." "I know that 30 minutes ago a woman was sitting here enjoying her birthday dinner," Marcus continued. "Then her own family spent 10 minutes systematically destroying her confidence and calling her used goods. I know that everyone at this table either participated in that cruelty or sat silently while it happened. And I know that if my daughter ever treats another woman the way you just treated your sister, we're going to have a very serious problem." Zoe nodded firmly. "Dad taught me that being single means you're strong enough to wait for someone who deserves you, not desperate enough to settle for someone who doesn't. Maybe that's what being used really means. You've lived enough to know what you won't accept anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Uncle Pete stared at his coffee cup, his face red with embarrassment. Kelly looked like she'd been slapped, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Tyler had put his phone away and was studying the table like it held the secrets of the universe. But it was Nana Ruth's reaction that broke my heart. Tears were streaming down her weathered cheeks as she reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Oh, Brooke. Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. I'm so proud of the woman you've become, and I should have said that instead of letting them." Her voice broke completely. Marcus reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, but not his police card. This one was simple white cardstock with black lettering. "I volunteer to teach self-defense classes at the community center every Saturday morning. Confidence starts from within, but sometimes it helps to know you can handle whatever comes your way." He placed the card next to my water glass. "Happy birthday, by the way. 30 is just the beginning of the best years of your life." As Marcus and Zoe walked back to their table, Amber stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is insane. I'm not apologizing for telling the truth." She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the diner, leaving the rest of us sitting in stunned silence. The truth. As if cruelty and truth were the same thing. The silence that followed Amber's dramatic exit felt like the aftermath of a tornado. Other diners slowly resumed their conversations, but I could feel their sideways glances and whispered commentary. In a town like Cedar Falls, this story would be told and retold until it became local legend. Nana Ruth was the first to speak, her voice trembling with emotion. "Brooke, that man was absolutely right. I've been so worried about you being alone that I forgot to celebrate how strong you've become. You took care of dying animals today, and then you came here and let us tear you down without fighting back. That's not weakness, honey. That's grace." Uncle Pete shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I guess maybe we were a little hard on you tonight. It's just that we worry, you know? We want you to be happy." "I am happy," I said. And for the first time that night, I meant it. I wake up every morning and go to a job where I save lives. I live in my own place and make my own decisions. I haven't been this content in years. Tyler looked genuinely ashamed. "I'm sorry, Brooke. I was just going along with everyone else. That was wrong." Kelly remained silent, picking at her napkin and avoiding eye contact with everyone. She'd been publicly called out by a stranger for her behavior, and her pride was clearly wounded. But sometimes pride needs to be wounded before healing can begin. As we prepared to leave, Marcus and Zoe were getting ready to go as well. Zoe approached our table while her father paid the check, and she looked directly at me with the kind of confidence I wished I'd had at 16. "I just wanted to say that what happened tonight was really messed up, but the way you handled it was amazing. You didn't yell or storm out or say mean things back. You just sat there with dignity, and that takes real strength." Her words meant more to me than she could possibly know. This brave teenager had just given me a gift I didn't even realize I needed. Over the following weeks, the story of what happened at Maggie's kitchen spread through Cedar Falls, but not in the way I'd feared. Instead of becoming the town's pitied spinster, I became something unexpected. Women approached me at the grocery store to thank me for taking a stand. Even though I'd barely said a word that night, single mothers told me they'd started setting boundaries with their own judgmental relatives. Even some married women admitted they admired my independence. Mrs. Patterson, whose kitten I'd treated the day of my birthday dinner, stopped by the rescue center with a lasagna and a story about her own sister's harsh criticism of her life choices. "That policeman was right," she said. Sometimes strangers see us clearer than family does. 3 months later, Zoe Thompson showed up at Cedar Falls Animal Rescue, asking about volunteer opportunities for her community service hours. She was bright, compassionate, and had clearly inherited her father's sense of justice. Through Zoe, I learned that Marcus was divorced and raising his daughter alone after his ex-wife abandoned them 2 years earlier. He understood something about family rejection that resonated with my own experience. Marcus and I began as friends, bonding over coffee and conversations about raising teenagers and rescue animals respectively. He taught me self-defense on Saturday mornings, and I taught Zoe how to properly socialize fearful dogs. We built something real and honest, based on mutual respect rather than desperation or convenience. 6 months after that terrible birthday dinner, I hosted my 31st birthday at my apartment above the hardware store. The guest list was small but perfect. Marcus and Zoe, Dr. Williams from the rescue center, Mrs. Patterson, Dolly from Maggie's Kitchen, and Nana Ruth, who had become my fiercest advocate for living life on my own terms. Amber didn't come, and I didn't miss her. Uncle Pete and Aunt Kelly sent a card but kept their distance, which suited everyone just fine. Sometimes the most loving thing family can do is give you space to grow. As we sat around my tiny kitchen table sharing chocolate cake and stories, I realized that the stranger who stood up for me that night had given me more than just a moment of validation. He'd shown me what it looked like when someone truly saw your worth and wasn't afraid to defend it. More importantly, he'd taught his daughter to recognize strength in unexpected places and to speak up when she witnessed injustice. The best relationships aren't built on settling for less than you deserve. They're built on recognizing that you deserve more than you ever thought possible. Being called used goods was supposed to be an insult, but I've come to see it differently. Yes, I'm used. I'm used to standing up for creatures who can't defend themselves. I'm used to working hard for what I believe in. I'm used to building a life that makes me proud, with or without someone else's approval. And I'm definitely used to being worth more than people's shallow judgments. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by their relationship status. Comment below and tell me about a time when a stranger's kindness changed your perspective. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real stories about finding strength in unexpected places.